Hey everybody, let's be honest for a second. Is being a dedicated podcast editor even a sustainable full-time job today? Or is it destined to be just another side hustle? That's the tough question that I'm discussing today. Matt reached out and said he's feeling a little sick today, so he won't be joining us, at least not on camera. He might pop up in the discussion or the chats, but it's just me today. But if you're someone who edits podcasts for others, you'll want to hear what I have to say about the current state of the industry, because I've seen a lot of change over the 5 years I've been a professional editor. It's a little bit of an interesting, there's some contradictions that I see, because some people are out there trying to sell you on courses or memberships under the premise of making serious money editing podcasts, or others charge $300 to $1,200 per episode, or land high-paying podcast clients. Yet I see a ton of people asking, how do I find clients? Or is it possible to make a living from editing? What this tells me is that not everyone is making serious money offering editing services. The truth is that I know very few people who are able to make a full self-employment income from podcast editing. There are a lot of factors that come into play here, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. If you're new to the live stream, this is Shop Talk for content creators. And we talk about, I guess today, I talk about everything about podcast editing, making content. Matt and I we're both creators, and we also offer creative services like podcast editing. So we're familiar with all the different sides of the process. So whether you're a podcaster, streamer, or someone who's just making videos, we're here to share what we've learned. Just in case you're unfamiliar with me or new to my channel as it is, I'm Jesse. I'm a podcast editor. I'm a content creator, and it's early in the morning for me, so sometimes the words don't come out right, but I'm also an AI consultant. I do this every Tuesday. Usually I'm joined with or by Matthew Bliss, but like I said, he's out sick today. And before we really dig in, I do want to mention that if you are someone who is running a business, freelance or otherwise, you might find the new stream I'm doing with Amanda and Tara interesting because we talk about business and we give advice. Last week we talked about AI. We'll be talking about more like practical uses of AI and some workflows that might be of use for some of you. And then we're going to start going into branding and business operations, but we talk about all things business. And you can find a link to that on my other channels tab on my YouTube page. And we also will stream to my Facebook, this channel. We're kind of all over the place. Feel free to reach out if you're not sure where to find us. And if there's anybody out there, please say hi. Let me know where you are, what you're up to, what you do, why you're interested, something. But let's start with how the industry is changing. I got into this during COVID like a lot of other podcast editors did. And I've seen a lot of change over that time. Probably the two biggest that we've seen during that time is the emergence of AI and the globalization of service providers through sites like Fiverr and Upwork. And let's talk about AI for a minute. When it first came out, a lot of people were a little lukewarm on it. A lot of editors still, they're not 100% sold on it as being a complete replacement for what we do. And I have to be honest that, yeah, using something like Descript and just using the edits as it provides it is not going to replace a good editor. But if you learn how to spot bad edits, it's going to be more than enough to replace us. A lot of podcasters have already replaced us using tools like Descript and Riverside. Because at the end of the day, they have to kind of balance between cost and efficiency. And for a lot of podcasters, especially those who don't do this as part of their business, good enough is oftentimes good enough for them. They don't need the type of skill and experience that someone like myself or Matthew or any other high-quality editor brings to the table. And I think this is one of the things that, as podcast editors, we need to understand. That a lot of the podcasters out there can't see the need to pay a lot more for the small types of things that we do that a lot of people don't hear. And we do a lot of stuff that the average listener can't really appreciate. Trying to see if there's anything else to talk about with the AI and Descript. Probably not right now, and I'll think of something else in the future, and we'll dive back into it when that comes up. But the other thing that's really impacted podcast editing is sites like Fiverr and Upwork. Since, like, over the last probably 3 or 4 years, between AI, and by AI I'm talking mostly about Descript, Riverside, there's a few others like that allow you to do text-based editing, has the AI-powered audio cleanup, the stuff that makes it easy to do it yourself without the skill. But the other one is the sites like Fiverr and Upwork. Those sites have done a couple of things. They've increased the number of... Let's backtrack. Once the podcasters started to find out about Fiverr and Upwork, they started going there to find editors. I see far fewer, I guess, postings on Facebook or LinkedIn looking for podcast editors. And that tells me one of two things. Either a lot of these people have started doing it themselves, or they've started going to Fiverr and Upwork to find editors. Those sites, though, they're a double-edged sword. They can, even though... Sorry, people. Like I said, it's early in the morning, and it is a lot easier to pull this off when you've got a co-host. So bear with me as I try to gather my thoughts. But for sites like Upwork and Fiverr, they're a double-edged sword. You can, if you're an editor, it makes it easier to find clients. It also makes it easier for podcasters to find editors. Let's talk about the pros about being able to find clients there. It reduces, as podcast editors, it reduces our need to rely on marketing to drive people to us, because we can set up shop on these sites and make it easy for clients to find us. We can also respond to job postings. So in a lot of ways, it makes it a lot easier for podcast editors to find clients. The flip side of that, though, is because there are so many podcast editors on there, it allows the podcasters to shop on price. And since it's a global marketplace, there's people at all price points, but it makes it a challenge for someone like myself who lives in the US. Not only that, but I live in a higher cost part of the US, and I'm fully self-employed. So me and Tara are fully self-employed. So all of our income is derived from our self-employment. That means we have a lot more overhead than anyone who's doing this as a freelance service. And by freelance, I'm talking more, you don't do this as a full-time job. It's usually a side hustle, or you have a spouse, partner who has other sources of income, so you're not relying 100% on that income. So that puts me at a disadvantage to people who are living in cheaper areas, because I have to charge a lot more for my time. If I was living overseas where there's a much cheaper cost of living, I could offer really great service at really affordable rates. So we have to keep that in mind. Globalization is a good thing, but it does cause more challenges for those of us who live in areas with higher costs of living. There will always be clients who are looking for those types of editors who charge more, but for the most part, those are going to be businesses, and more specifically, larger businesses who have marketing budgets. The challenge there is a lot of those types of companies, they tend to go to podcast agencies where they can get a much higher level of service, and they're willing to pay for that. So let's move on. I want to make it clear that I'm not trying to be negative about people who can charge less. It's just the nature of business. There's going to be people who have lower cost of living, lower overhead. They can sometimes be, that can a lot of times be an advantage because you can charge less. It can make you more attractive to those who have lower budgets. But it can work against you when you're trying to get clients who have bigger budgets, who want to pay for that perceived higher quality. They equate price to quality. So if you're someone who's charging, let's say, $50 an episode, and you're trying to pitch that to a corporation looking to start a branded podcast, you might get why am I drawing blanks today? You might get crossed off that list pretty quickly because you're charging so much less than other people that are quoting. The flip side of that is, for someone like me, because my rates are higher, because I have to charge at least $300 an episode to cover my time, it makes it harder for me to land those clients who are on tighter budgets. And that's going to be the majority of podcasters. So that puts me at a disadvantage compared to even people who are doing this as a freelance side gig. Because for a lot of you who are doing it as a side hustle, this is extra money. This is fun money. Maybe it's the money that goes into savings for vacation. You have a lot more flexibility in price. And I want to talk about price because that's a question I see all the time, and I see a lot of people, not a lot of people, I see things out there that talk about, well, you can be making this, or this is the average that podcast editors are charging. There's no going rate for podcast editing. There just isn't, because we all charge what we need to do. Someone who lives in Nebraska is probably going to charge differently than someone who's living in New York City. And they're going to charge differently than somebody living in England or India or Australia. We all have different costs of living, different needs, so prices are all over the place. You can go on to Upwork and see just how much prices can vary. I know I've talked to clients who kind of get shell-shocked when I give them my price. Now I do a much better job of qualifying clients before I talk to them, so they have an idea of what the price looks like. But early on, people would get a little bit of shell shock when they heard the price and say, well, I'm talking to others who are quoting prices from like $20 to $50 an episode. That's great. If that's what you're if that's what your budget is, you're going to want to talk to one of them, because I simply cannot offer podcast editing for $50 an episode. It's just not, it doesn't make sense for me, because I'm not getting paid enough for my time to be able to pay my bills. So for me, I have a very narrow, addressable audience out there, or clients who could conceivably work with me. So that makes things challenging for me. For a lot of others, it's not a challenge because your prices are more in the middle, so you're more attractive to a broader range of clients. And this is why pricing is such a tricky thing. I see people ask, well, how much should I charge for this? It's really difficult to say because everybody needs to charge what you need to charge. If you're doing this on the side, you can probably just make up a number and be that you're okay with and you're fine. If you're someone who has bills to pay, you need to do a lot of math to figure out how much you need to charge for each hour you work to make it worthwhile. So when you see surveys that tell you the average podcaster is charging $200 an episode, you've got to take that with a grain of salt. Dig down into the numbers a little bit more to see how many editors did they talk to? Where are they based? Something like the one the Podcast Editors Academy does. The last one was something like 100 participants. 100 out of, probably tens of thousands of editors? That's probably not going to be very realistic as an average, because if you dig into the numbers, there's a good number of people who are charging probably $400, $500 or more. You take those out, and that number, the average price being charged, probably drops $25 to $50. You take out the top 25%, you start seeing that number come back down to where the true average is. And all you have to do is go on to Upwork to see the range that people are charging. And I'd be willing to bet that the number of people charging under $150 is significantly higher than those who are charging $200 or more. Again, it comes back to clients. Those who serve businesses can generally charge a little bit more. Those who have been doing this longer, who have established client bases, can generally charge a little bit more. For those who are starting out, or if you don't have a full roster, it's going to be a little bit tougher for us to get up to that $200 mark. But we also have to look at the flip side of how AI and Upwork and Fiverr are impacting the industry. The other way that AI is impacting the industry is it's allowing a lot of people that didn't have the skills to be an editor to enter the podcast editing space. So we have a lot more competition than we did 5 years ago. And there's definitely a lot more competition than people faced who got into this 10 or more years ago. So take things with a grain of salt. Ask yourself, when did this person get started? Do they have a full roster? Because someone who started, say, in 2015, there was a shortage of qualified editors. It was a very specialized skill. So if you got started back then, when there weren't a lot of editors, there wasn't a lot of competition, and you were good at marketing or networking, it would be really easy to build up a successful business. But a lot of things that worked back then probably aren't going to work so much now. Or they will, but not to the same degree, because there's still so much more competition. And that competition, along with the marketplaces, that's created a commoditized service out of podcast editing. That means the clients can shop based on price because there isn't a shortage of editors. It's not a specialized skill anymore. A really good example of that is with editing. I'm assuming you're all editors out there. You know that when it comes to editing audio or even video, the editing is the easiest part. I can teach someone how to edit in a few minutes and get them up and running. What took a lot more skill and experience to be good at was audio cleanup, mixing the audio, EQing it, compressing it. But AI, it's simplified that to the point where you don't need any skill to be able to clean up audio. You just need a plugin, throw it into Descript or Adobe or Riverside. They have tools that will clean it up for you. I spent a good year learning how to really use Isotope RX so I could clean up audio and make things sound really good. In the last 3 years, I've completely moved away from RX because we have plugins with 1, 2, or 3 knobs that you can use in real time. You just adjust the knob until it sounds the way you want it to, and you're ready to go. All you need are some ears and an idea of what sounds good, and that's it. There's smart plugins for EQ and compression. I would spend probably 15 to 20 minutes, maybe up to 30 minutes per track when I'd get started with an edit to clean up the audio and get it mixed before I started editing. These days, I'm spending maybe 5 minutes tops per track. Most of that time is just loading up the template, training the AI, training the plugin on the voice for the EQ and the compression, getting my levels set, and that's it. So, all of that to say, AI has lowered the barrier to entry, so anybody can start offering podcast editing services. And I see a lot of people on the Riverside group. I'm sure it would be similar in the Descript groups, that there's a lot of people who are offering editing services to others who are working strictly in Riverside. To me, that boggles my mind because I'm so used to a certain way of working and having the power of plugins that I don't see how anybody could offer those services without at least exporting the audio out and bringing it into a DAW for stuff like EQ, compression, and noise reduction. Because to my ears, the built-in stuff to those types of platforms pales in comparison to what's available in plugin form. And I want to kind of give an example of where I see podcast editing going based on what I've seen happen in other industries over the years. Let's use web design as an example. 25 years ago, somewhere around there, you'd easily pay somewhere around $1,000 minimum per page for a website. Then all of a sudden, Dreamweaver came out, and WordPress started being kind of manipulated into being used for web building. With these two types of tools, the number of web designers increased. So we saw an increase in web designers. And then as WordPress became more mature, we saw builders like Elementor, Divi, and a host of others come onto the market. So now you can find people who will build you a website for $1,000 or less. You can even build your own website if you want to. It won't be as good as what a professional designer could do, but it's good enough, and it's cost effective. So, how many of you editors built your own website and are content with it because it's good enough? This is how many podcasters are looking at our services. Well, I could pay that, but I could do it myself, and it'll be good enough. Why should I pay someone hundreds of dollars per episode when I can do it in Descript, and it's fine? That's the thing we need to pay attention to. Other things that I've seen change over time, and I've actually been saying this for years, is podcast managers have set themselves up, especially those who were getting into podcast management 3, 4, 5 years ago. They put themselves in prime position for what podcasters are looking for now. Outside of a few specific use cases, and I'm talking about basically large companies who might have creative teams, communications teams who can handle a lot of the other parts of podcasting. And I'm talking about like the asset generation, show notes, graphics, social media content. Outside of the companies who have dedicated people for that, or even the smaller companies who hire for that, most small businesses, most podcasters, they'd prefer a generalist who can do a lot of things over a specialist who can only do one or two. So that's something that really needs to be thought about. If you're a podcast editor, to be appealing to the widest segment of podcasters, we need to listen to what their pain points are. Their pain points tend to be time, marketing, editing. So the more we can offer these to them, the more appealing we're going to be. For someone like me who I don't like doing show notes, I'm not a good writer. A few years ago, I would probably find someone who was good at that. Because that's how you do things. If you're not good at something, you hire someone who is. But these days, that's what AI is really good at, is being that assistant, being that person who might be good at things you aren't. So for me, I can use AI to take a transcript from this live stream. I've got an automation that takes the transcript, it uploads it to the cloud so that I can run it through ChatGPT. It will give me the timestamps, the chapter markers. It'll give me a description. It'll give me all of the things I need to get this out onto YouTube or to update it after the fact with the timestamps, an accurate description. Same thing with podcasts. I could set up an automation to take the audio, to transcribe it, run it through, create show notes in the client's voice that are branded, fits the format they want. So that makes it easier to offer that service. But not all things can be automated or done by AI, and marketing is one of those. And I've got a comment here. From Mike, AI is offering a number of elements that I think offer a good primer, but few things that are capture and toss out live. And we've got a follow-up. The concept of building in proof time for the AI ginned up stuff is often currently a lost or forgotten art. Yeah, with AI, we can't just take it off the shelf and think it's ready to go. The more we get into the prompting, we should be able to get something that is pretty much close to where we want it to be, but we still need to set aside that time to proof it and go through it. And if it spits out some of those cliche words that ChatGPT, Gemini, all of them tend to use, we've got to spend the time going in and fixing that. It does take a little bit of time, but it doesn't take as much time as if we were to create all of this from scratch. And those are some good points Mike is making, that AI, it needs a babysitter. We have to look at it as an assistant, someone who is good at doing like a first draft. It can be good for ideation. It can be good for a lot of things. But at this point, it still needs that human interaction. It still needs the human to go through and make sure everything is good, that it's up to our standard. If we let AI do its thing and don't make it human, people will start to pick up on it and tune out. And we could probably make the argument that for stuff like show notes or YouTube descriptions, that AI probably isn't going to make or break anything for us. But if we're creating social media content, if we're writing blogs, anything that is really more human to human communication, we need to put more effort into what we're doing, because anybody can create a bot that will go through transcript, create a bunch of social media content, and post it. But the whole thing with social media is it's social. It's supposed to be about that personal interaction. If you're using bots for everything, we're losing that interaction. I see a lot of stuff on LinkedIn where it's this really long post. It's littered with emojis. You start reading it, and right away you can just tell this was a generic post created in ChatGPT. So I lose interest right away. I'm not even going to bother reading because the post has lost credibility with me. So these are definitely things we need to be aware of. And we talked a lot about this on the live stream we did for Business and Brand Remix on my other channel last week, because there's so much about AI that people get wrong. They think it will do everything for them. They think that it's the best thing ever, or they're the opposite. They try it and feel like it's not that good. I can't trust it to do anything. And the truth is somewhere there in the middle. We've got to look at it like we're onboarding a new employee, someone who has no experience with us, with our company, with our needs. You can't hire a new employee who has no background in what we do. They just know how to do the work and say, okay, here's a big project, go do it, without any kind of context or background or training. It's just not going to work. Same thing with AI. We have to use the right agent. Or the right employee for the job. We need to let them know what their job actually is. We need to give them context about what a good job looks like, what a bad job looks like. The more we put into the prompting, the better the output. And that's why, for me, I'd rather use something like ChatGPT where I have full control over the prompting over something that is more of a specialized tool like Cast Magic. Because for a tool like that to work, it has to use more general prompting. So you're going to get more generic outputs. You might be able to go in and customize it a little bit, but you don't have the kind of power you do when working with it on your own, in your own LLM, where you can control everything. You can train it on your voice, your show. If you're using it for show notes, how you format it. You just get so much more power doing it yourself. And to go even further, you can build automations a lot easier when you're using everything on its own. It's going to be a lot harder to use Cast Magic to create automations unless they have an API available to you. And a lot of these smaller tools don't have APIs because they want to keep you in their platform. And for anybody who might not know, all Cast Magic is it's a front end. Behind the scenes, it's using ChatGPT. It might be using Opus Clip for the video stuff that they've added. But there's nothing special about it. It hasn't really been trained on your stuff. It's more of a tool aimed at podcasters to help make things easier, but it's not made specifically for you or you or you. That's what I help podcasters or clients with, is how can we take your workflow and use AI to build in efficiencies to help you save time, to help you get more efficient in how you're doing things, to get more of that time back, to maybe even reduce the number of subscriptions that you're paying for. So there's a lot of power there, but there's also a lot of confusion. There's a lot of misunderstanding about what AI is or isn't, what it can or can't do. I mean, there's all sorts of things that we keep finding new uses for it for. And Mike, if you're still there, how have you been using AI? What have you found it good for in your business? What have you found that it struggles with? Because I think there's a lot of... It's one of those areas that I don't see a whole lot of talk about other than this is what I use. I use ChatGPT or I use Cast Magic. I mean, for me, I'm more involved in creating the workflows of working on custom prompting. So we use ChatGPT, we use Gemini, we use Claude, depending on what type of need we have. But for most people, just pick one. You can't go wrong with ChatGPT or Gemini. They're kind of back and forth about who has the best at any given time. They're releasing new models, seems like daily almost. For most people, learn one language model. That would be your ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude. Learn one image model if you need image stuff. So that would also be Gemini. Gemini has image, I think. ChatGPT, Korea, Midjourney. I know there's a few others out there. And then if you're doing anything where you might need video, like B-roll type stuff, there's a couple of platforms out there that are doing video creation, Runway. I know there's a couple others that I'm spacing out on. But try not to get overwhelmed by AI. Just learn the tools that you need, because that's going to go a whole lot further. Going down the rabbit hole of what tools are available. Oh, this one just dropped and it can do this. Oh, there's this other tool over here and it can do this. We're either going to go broke with all of the subscriptions, or it's going to be so overwhelming that we can't really learn how to use any of them, and we're just juggling things. So that's my best advice for AI use for podcast editors. Learn the tools that you will need so you can master them. And AI is like any other thing. You need skill. It takes time to learn. It takes practice. You can't just turn it on, give it a generic prompt, and expect the best out of it. We need to work on it, figure out how to best prompt it. And AI can actually help you build better prompts as you go. But one of the other things that I do recommend for podcast editors is definitely learn marketing. That is one of the biggest needs that clients have. How do I grow my show? How do I monetize it? How do I expand my audience? Some form of those questions I see daily. And not only will marketing help you be more attractive to these clients, because you can give them better advice on how to grow your show other than what anybody can go to Google or ChatGPT and find out. It's going to help you with your business. Because these days, unless you are a master networker, marketing is always going to be a valuable skill to have. It's going to help you if you're using Upwork. It's going to help you separate yourself from the others by building a cohesive brand, by being able to market yourself. Same thing with your website. The more you can use marketing, branding to help yourself stand out, the better. So let's go to some more comments. Okay, Mike said, I found that there are grand foundational structures that help many people start, but it instantly tosses out collective garbage mostly. And yeah, using it the way I see so many people do it does put out a lot of garbage. And one of the key points is, just like anything else, it's going to be hard for us to know what that garbage is if it's in an area that we're not experts in. As a podcast editor, most of us should be able to spot the downsides of using Descript really quickly, just like someone who's an experienced copywriter or any kind of writer is going to be able to point out all of the shortcomings of ChatGPT. So we need to ask ourselves, is this actually good, or does it seem good to us because we don't know the difference between good and okay? Your concept of using it to take and build your own prompting is vital to success with AI of any kind. And I mean, that's the biggest shortcut that a lot of people don't understand, is you can ask AI to write you a prompt, or give it your prompt. And if you're not happy with it, work with it, let it know what you don't like about the output, how you want to see it changed. If you're having it write show notes, give it your first prompt, let it generate the show notes. Go through, edit the show notes the way that you want it to look, the way you want it to read. Then give it back, copy that, give it back to the AI. Ask it, okay, this is what I want to see. Help me generate a prompt that will help you generate this output. Now you have a better prompt to use next time. Prompts are an iterative process. You get a good one, maybe it works the first few times you use it, but then that third or fourth time, it kind of reverts back to something more like ChatGPT. We call it a throws up. But that happens sometimes. We can go back to the prompt and say, okay, how can we refine this to avoid this new issue that's come up? So just keep reiterating. No, not reiterating. Keep iterating your prompts, and it's never going to be perfect 100% of the time, but it will get you in the ballpark, and we can go from there. The texture of what's used is important, but few know how to or will take the time to marinate the abilities into their possible skill sets. And that's so true, because for a lot of us, we're busy, we don't have time, and we're not going to set aside the time to build those skills, to practice, to incorporate these. Where a lot of us are looking for the simple solution, and AI can give us simple solutions, but they're generally not the best solutions. And for me personally, I have a hard time selling a client on a deliverable that I don't feel confident is high quality. So if I'm going to use AI to offer these types of services, I need to feel confident in my ability to use it and my ability to know what's good and what isn't, so that my client, they're getting a good deliverable each and every time. Doesn't matter if I'm doing it from scratch, if I'm using AI for some of it or all of it. The deliverable needs to be high quality if it's coming from me. That's part of my brand. That's part of the brand of whoever is offering the service. Mike agrees on finding and identifying the lowlights of popular programs like Descript. Yeah, that's the thing. We can, in the areas we're experts in, that we're experienced in, it's easy to see what an AI does well and what it doesn't do well. And that's why we need to have some way of identifying what's good or what isn't good when we're using it. I'm lucky in that my wife is like my complete opposite in so many ways, and that where I have strengths, she has weaknesses. Where I have weaknesses, she has strengths. So when it comes to writing, she can look at stuff. I sit there and think, hey, this looks good to me. She looks at it and it's like, no, this is bad. We can't put this out. We need to change this and this and this. So that's what it's about. Even if you find someone to work with who can just be a second set of eyes on stuff, I think that's really good in anything we're doing, because we can get blinders on when we're doing all of the work. It's always good to get a fresh perspective. As an artist myself, I also appreciate the AI stuffs as concept generators that I can build on without actually using what is given by the AI. They offer lots of creative juice. And I see a lot of debates about how generative AI is bad for creatives. I don't see it that way. And Tara doesn't see it that way. Tara is more of the creative, and she's always finding new ways to use AI to do things she wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. It frees her up to be the creative director, and if she can visualize it, she can start to create it. It might not be 100% where she wants it. We'll get there in time. But there's so much we can do, from ideation to being able to create stuff that wouldn't have been possible otherwise, or you needed a whole team and big budget to pull off. It's doing for creatives the same thing that Descript is doing for podcasters. It's opening up possibilities that otherwise would have been unachievable beforehand, at least without a ton of money and a team that you could hire to do the stuff for you. So I'm not someone who is completely against generative AI. There's a lot of ethics involved, and I understand those arguments that we don't want AI generating copyrighted stuff or trademarked stuff, but we have to also look at it from the perspective that all creatives are inspired by things they've seen in the past. Is that bad if we take inspiration from, if you're a musician? Is it bad to take inspiration from the music you loved, or if you're a writer, books that you've loved, taking inspiration from others? I don't really see a huge difference. It's more in, if you want to use AI to create something that's already been created, you could probably do that. I know I've seen some examples that get posted in the news here and there. There was something about like the Joker a couple of years ago. Yeah, if you put in a prompt telling it you want to create this image, okay, it's probably going to do that. Maybe not now. Maybe they've put guardrails in, but I don't get into the argument that just because it's been trained on other people's work means that it's inherently bad. I'd also ask that people jump out of their comfort zone with AI tools. This is most important when using either a phone or a PC or a computer to interact with it. It's a completely different thinking pattern on each. And that's one thing I haven't done. I tend to not use my phone for AI, but I know there are ways you can interact with it. And to me, I would think about being able to use it as a chat mechanism, being able to talk to it versus using text to do things, because I can see how that could really change how you interact with things, because being able to have a conversation with it is going to be a much different experience than if you're typing stuff out and having a text-based chat. It not only does it change thinking patterns, but it takes out, at least for me, I'm someone who will sit there and type like an email. I'll type it out, revise it before hitting send. I spend way too much time on emails. But if I could just talk to AI and tell it, this is what I want it to say, just clean it up and make it professional. We can save time by just using stream of thought, talking in a natural way. We're not overanalyzing things. We let the AI analyze that stuff for us. Not sure if that's what you're going at with that comment, Mike, but that's my take on it. Totally agree on wanting to deliver quality content, not something that allows me to check a box in a list of what I promised. And that's really how I see it, because I take pride in my work. I want my brand to represent that. I could do just low effort across the board, and a lot of clients might be happy with that, because the reality is a lot of clients are just looking for someone who can save them time. They're okay as long as things are good enough. AI might be good enough. But if I'm charging a client for that, it needs to be at least good enough for me. From there, it's up to interpretation as to whether that's good enough for the client, and we all need to decide where our threshold is. I'm not someone who's going to go out and aim for perfection in everything I do, but everything has to be done at a high level. And as a high level as far as how I view things, and at least something that the client is happy with. There's a lot of things we could talk about in between those two, but I'm of the mindset that there's not a lot of return on investment for aiming for perfection unless we have a client who is willing to pay for that type of effort. Agreed on the yin and yang of my wife as well. It's incredibly valuable in life, not just in business. And I completely agree, because at least for us, we're that perfect combination where we agree on all of the things that are important. But when it comes to other elements of life, we balance each other out. She's a good writer. I'm more of a technician. She's the creative, though she kind of walks that line between creative and technical. But for the really technical stuff, I thrive on that and help her on that. It's really weird that we were really kind of meant to be together. We love the same types of music. We've got the same kind of humor. We love the same types of TV shows and movies. We enjoy the same activities. We balance each other out in the other ways. When it comes to communication, she's a lot better with it than I am, so she can help me improve my communication or my writing. There's so many things that we help each other out with, and I look at that as a huge positive and something that gives us an edge up when it comes to offering services, because between the two of us, we have a lot more special powers, superpowers we can offer clients because of that yin and yang. And responding to the phone versus PC thing, I love the phone's ability to be essentially the computer on the enterprise. Interacting, let me iterate, etc. That is where I want it all to go. And I think we can't be that far away from stuff like that. What I'm waiting for is the ability for AI to really interact with our computer and our files, because that's going to really allow us to streamline and make really efficient automations. Can you imagine a world where a client uploads files to, say, Google Drive. Those automatically get downloaded to your computer. The computer identifies them, creates a new folder following your structure, moves the files in there, alerts you that, hey, you have new files ready to be edited. Even better would be if it could actually open up the DAW and insert those tracks. Whether we can get there, I'm sure at some point we will. But then when you're done, you render the file. Once it goes into the folder, it can upload it to the Google Drive, send your client a note that here's your file. It can go into your invoicing system, add that to the invoice or create a new invoice, however you have it set up. And all you're doing is doing the editing, exporting it, but everything else is automated. We can do probably 70% of that right now. It's just the stuff, getting it off the cloud onto our computer and from our computer up onto the cloud. Everything being done on the computer is a little tougher to automate. Some of it probably can be. But once we get AI that can interact between the cloud and our computers, our phones, that's when things are really going to open up. And I think we're probably not that far away from starting to see the beginnings of that. And then continuing on, tell me more about the new blank program. I want to know about blank, by the way. Tea, early gray, hot. Yeah, so that's a really good way of using AI verbally. Being able to just talk to it, have it answer, give you the information. And for us as podcast editors, that is going to bring up probably a whole other thing, because there's probably going to be some changes in how we have to market things or do SEO to help all of the AIs find our content, whether that's a podcast, whatever. The easier we make it to find things, the better it is for us. Because when someone asks, I want to listen to a podcast about this topic, we want our podcast or our client's podcast or their episode that covers that topic to be the thing that the AI finds. So that's something that there's not a whole lot of clarity on yet, is how to get to be like the first thing on a search for that topic. SEOs, there's going to be a lot of change in that in the coming years as people people have already been using AI LLMs to do the kind of stuff they used to go onto Google to search for. So that's going to be an interesting thing for us to keep an eye on. And Mike, thank you for all of your comments, and it took a while to get through all of them, just because you bring up so many good points, and it's helpful for me because I don't have Matt here this week, so it's really helpful to not have to think about everything myself and have some interaction. So thank you, Mike. And I do want to pause things for a second and ask that if you're watching this and enjoying it, and you're on YouTube, give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you'd like to. This replay will be available, and if you are watching the replay and you're enjoying it, same thing. Give it a thumbs up, a like, whatever, and subscribe if you'd like to see more of it. And like I said at the beginning, me, Tara, and Amanda are doing Brand and Business Remix live streams every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, where we talk about all of the things about running a business. Kind of like me and Tara, yin and yang. You add Amanda into the mix. She brings a wealth of operations and business management into the fold. So we've got the complete 360 view of how you can improve businesses. And that's what we do. We help businesses find solutions to their problems. And whether that's branding, how do I get more clients? How do I build a brand and present myself in a way that higher end clients are going to want to work with me? Or how can I streamline my operations so I'm not spending as much money on this and this? Or how can we implement AI or automations to save us some time each day? There's all sorts of things that we can talk about, and we're going to more or less just bounce around our various specialties. So if you're interested, subscribe to Brand and Business Remix. You can find a link on my YouTube page under my other channels. We send out, again, I'm just having one of those mornings where all my words have gone away. We send out alerts on my Facebook, on LinkedIn. For now, it's also streaming on this channel. So there's a lot of ways to find out about it. And then one more comment. You got it, dude. Happy to help out. Getting after it. That's what it's all about. If we're doing this as a business, freelance or otherwise, to me, I look at freelance as still a business. And I think that's one of the things that so many freelancers get wrong, is they look at themselves, I'm just a freelancer. If you look at yourself as just a freelancer, you're always going to be just a freelancer. It also changes your mindset, how you approach things. To run a business, we need to have a really good idea of how much money we need to make, what our expenses are. We have to really look at things at a granular level to work out our pricing. The biggest concern I see when talking with clients who want to move on to full self-employment is they're charging way less than they need to earn. So you either have to take on more clients than you can manage and have to start building an agency model out of the gate, or you're just not able to make the money that you need to survive. And pricing is the biggest thing that gets in the way of being able to make that jump. And you can't just arbitrarily decide on a number for your price. There's a lot of math involved. You have to figure out all of your expenses, not just in the business, but for full self-employment, you've got to factor in your housing, your food, insurance, gas, car payments, all of your expenses. That's the difference between being someone who does this as a side hustle and someone who is doing this as full-time self-employment. You have a ton more expenses. Taxes are another one of those. Everything you make, 20 to 25% of that goes into self-employment taxes right off the bat. So that $200 that you see others are charging, you take a quarter of that, you're down to $150 an episode. You're probably spending, let's say, $50 in overhead per episode. So you're making $100 per episode for, 3, maybe 4 hours of work? That might be enough for you. It might not be. But you've got to go through and do the math to see what your minimum is. Like for me, I have to charge at least $65 an hour for anything I do for it to even make sense. Anything short of that, and I'm either having to work extra hours and throw off my work-life balance, or I have to take on more work, which again makes me work more, throws off my work-life balance, or I'm not able to buy as much food next time we go to the grocery store. So there's a lot that comes into the topic of pricing. And pricing is the biggest thing that holds people kind of hostage or prevents them from breaking through that ceiling they've hit into the next level. Mike, and I'm assuming the hostage thing popped into my head because you've been interacting, so that's probably a subliminal shout out to you. But yeah, if nobody has any other questions or comments, I think I've covered everything I wanted to talk about today. Let me go through my notes. Yeah, we talked about marketing, but I want to talk about it a little bit more because marketing is so important in 2025. Understanding what our clients want, how they perceive us, is just huge for being able to build our business. If you're on Upwork, building a profile that stands out amongst everybody else, knowing how to put together proposals that stand out. Marketing and branding are very closely related. And to learn marketing, you generally learn about branding. And to learn about branding, you learn about marketing. So when I talk about marketing and branding, I kind of use them interchangeably, even though Tara would smack me over the head saying that they're not the same thing. But they're closely related. So understanding branding and marketing is going to be really helpful for you running a business, for you helping to find better clients, to land new clients, but also for helping your existing clients, helping them be able to improve their brand, their growth. And the more we can help our clients grow, the more we have happy clients who aren't going to want to look for a cheaper editor or a cheaper service provider. So that's why I've been recommending for years that if you are doing this, to start learning marketing. It's a very beneficial skill and it's going to help. Because these days, everybody goes online. You've got to have some kind of website. You have to have some sort of social media, some kind of digital presence, or most people aren't going to know that you exist. How you present yourself on the digital stage is how you are perceived. Some people are a lot more outgoing. Other people are a lot more reserved. You've got to find your way. You've got to find the way that's going to work for you to get out in front of the people you want to work with. For some, that's going out and networking in person. That's not for me. I'm an introvert. I'm an awkward introvert. In-person networking is not it's not my cup of tea at all. So I lean more into content marketing. It gives us a very similar thing in that we're reaching hundreds or thousands of people with what we post. It's just not in person. So we lose some of that in-personness, But that's where the video and podcast content comes in, because that provides that know, like, trust factor. So I think I saw someone ask recently, how do you find higher ticket clients? Actually, I think I was asked that on last week's stream. How do I find high ticket clients, or how do I'm trying to remember how it was asked. How do I make myself more attractive to high value clients? And that's always the challenge, and there are so many things that come into play with that. And pricing comes into play. If you want to appeal to high ticket clients, you have to understand their needs, what their budget is, because if you don't have experience with branded podcasts, it's going to be tougher for you to stand out. And if you come in and you're charging significantly less than everybody else, most companies are just going to cross you off the list. When I worked in facility maintenance, I'd get quotes for whatever project we're doing. I look at them, anything that is out of line with kind of the average, I'm going to look at for a minute to figure out, okay, why is it this? If it's more expensive, what other things am I getting in return for this added expense? If it's cheaper, I'm looking at, okay, what services aren't they offering me? And if there's nothing obvious, I have to assume that they're cutting corners. And that might not always be true, but that's the thought process a lot of people go through. If you get 5 quotes for podcast editing, 3 of them are at $150 an episode, you get one that's $50 and one that's $500. Most people are going to probably go with one of the middle 3 because that's in the average. They're thinking, I'm probably not going to get much return on spending that extra $350 per episode. I mean, that's what, $3,500 per 10 episodes? That's a pretty big price difference. And if you don't make it clear what they get for that additional cost, you're going to get crossed off the list. Same thing with being the person who comes in really low. You're going to be dismissed because the assumption is you're either not that good, you don't value the services that you offer, you cut corners, or some combination of those, and none of those are a good look. So the best thing, if you want to appeal to bigger ticket clients, you have to present yourself as a bigger ticket editor, bigger ticket service provider. That means you have to have a website that looks good. You have to have a website that talks about the client and their pain points, so that when they land on your website, they go, you know what? This person understands me. They understand my pain points. This is someone I want to reach out to. Same thing with your proposals. They have to look the part. More than anything, that's what it comes down to. If you want to work with the big ticket clients, you have to look the part of a big ticket provider. Like I said, website, how you present yourself, how you price your services, all of that comes into play. That's all branding. That's all marketing. It all comes into play when we want to do something. If we're happy doing just the bare minimum, if we're happy getting clients by being the low-cost provider, that's fine. But you have to accept that that's what you've pictured or painted yourself into. When you are the low service provider and you get people based on quantity and price, You don't need to put any effort into your digital presence. You don't have to have a nice website because you're targeting people who are looking for low-cost alternatives or low-cost providers. That doesn't work when you want to move up the ladder to higher ticket higher ticket projects. And that's one of the other things for us editors to really think about. Post-production is generally the lowest rung on the production ladder. All of them, if you want more money, you need to move up higher on the ladder. That generally means being someone who can come in and play the role of a podcast manager or producer. Someone who can offload a lot of that work from the client. Clients are willing to pay more for people who can take all of that work off their plate. So all they have to do is show up and record. Even better is if you can work your way up past that so that you're involved on the front end of the podcast. Maybe front end's not the right word. But basically where you're working on the pre-production. You're doing all of the, maybe not all of it, but you're helping with ideation. You're helping with the planning and the scheduling. With businesses, that becomes an even bigger pain point. Someone who can take off all of that work. So you're doing scheduling. You help them come up with ideas. I have one client who's always struggling with time because they do everything themselves except for the editing. Her and her husband, they work together. They do all of the work. They do all of the pre-production. They do all of the show notes and the asset creation. And this is on top of a full-time job. So time is always something that they're running into a lack of. But they're not ready to let go of any of the control. Not all clients are. But a lot of clients are willing to let go of some of that control to get some of their time back. So that's something to really be aware of when you're diagnosing or doing discovery with a prospect or even existing clients. Finding out what their pain points are. Finding out the ways that you can help them solve those problems. And sometimes their pain points might not even be podcast related. So if you're focused entirely on podcasts, you might be leaving a lot of options on the table because you're not even talking about them. A lot of times when you're talking to, and this is probably more specific to businesses, for a lot of them, their pain points are not the same as what they think they are. We talked to one prospect who wanted a podcast. As we started talking to him, what we realized is that's what he had diagnosed as the solution to his problem. He wanted to generate more business. He wanted to do a lot of personal brand building. But what he wanted wasn't so much a podcast as kind of almost a small media company. One that's creating audio content, one that's creating video content, one that's doing reaction stuff to timely news. And we only figured that out by having a conversation with him, trying to figure out what the actual problem is that he's trying to solve. When you go to a doctor, you don't tell them what you have. You tell them what your symptoms are, and the doctor goes through and figures out diagnoses you with whatever, and gives you the solution. It's the same thing for us. We should be the ones asking questions to the client to figure out what their symptoms are, where it hurts, and figure out how we can solve that for them. The more we can get away from just hyper-focusing on the one thing that we do and having a conversation to find out what things are hurting them, that's where we can start to really open up our revenue generation avenues. And that's where having a network of people you can work with really helps, because most of you aren't in a situation where, like me and Tara, have each other and we can cover 80% of business needs. For the other 20, we have Amanda that we can bring in. Figure out the areas where you have weaknesses and find people you can partner with who can help you. If you have a client that decides they need a website, you can refer them out to someone to deliver that for them. We want to be the people that our clients come to first when they have a problem, because we're the problem solvers to them. No one's going to come to us to ask about a website if we're just their podcast editor. So that's the best advice I have. Get a better understanding of marketing and branding. Figure out how to price your services according to what you need to charge, not based on some random number or what the internet tells you should be charging. And figure out how to be less of a podcast editor and more of a problem solver for your clients, so that in their eyes, when they have a problem, they go to you, because you're the one that solves the problems for them. That's how you build a lasting relationship with clients. One that, even if they decide to part ways with you because they can't afford your rates anymore, they still come to you because they have a new problem, and you've always been able to help them solve those problems in the past. But I want to thank Mike and everybody for watching, and hopefully Matt is feeling better next week, and we'll see you then. Have a good one.